What happens when America's most lethal operator discovers her mission isn't about saving lives, but ending the one man who could stop a war commander Rachel Cole had never questioned an order, until the day she looked through her scope and saw the truth her government was hiding. This is the story of a soldier who chose conscience over country and paid the ultimate price. If you want to know what happened when she refused to pull the trigger, hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next will change everything you think you know about loyalty, honor, and the cost of doing what's right. She was ordered to assassinate a leader, then discovered the truth that changed everything. The satellite phone buzzed at 0347 hours. Commander Rachel Cole was already awake. She had been awake for the past 6 nights, ever since the war broke out. Sleep was a luxury she had surrendered long ago, somewhere between her 3rd deployment and her 4th confirmed kill at distances most snipers only dreamed about. The screen showed a single word: Cardinal. Her blood went cold. Cardinal wasn't a contact name. It was a classification level that existed in whispers, in rooms without windows, in conversations that were never recorded. She had heard it mentioned exactly twice in her 14-year career with naval special warfare. Both times, the people who spoke it were dead within a year. Not killed in action, just dead. Rachel dressed in silence. Her apartment in Virginia Beach held nothing personal, no photographs, no mementos, no evidence that a human being actually lived there. Just tactical gear books on military history and a coffee maker that had seen more action than most Marines. She was out the door in 4 minutes. The black SUV was waiting exactly where the message said it would be. No driver visible through the tinted windows. No license plate. She opened the rear door and climbed inside. The door locked automatically. "Commander Cole?" The voice came from a speaker, not from the driver's seat. "You will surrender your phone, your watch, and any electronic devices. Place them in the box beside you." She complied without a question. This was how it worked at this level. You followed orders, or you didn't get to this level in the first place. The SUV moved through the pre-dawn darkness. She counted turns, estimated speed, calculated distance. Old habits. After 43 minutes, they entered an underground parking structure. 3 levels down, security checkpoints that would stop a tank battalion. When the vehicle finally stopped, a different voice spoke. "Step out, Commander. Follow the blue line." The parking garage was empty except for the painted blue line on the concrete floor. It led to an elevator with no buttons, no floor indicator, just a biometric scanner. She placed her hand on it. The elevator descended for what felt like forever. When the doors opened, she was looking at a conference room that didn't exist on any blueprint. The table was polished black granite. The walls were some kind of soundproofing material that seemed to absorb light itself. 3 people sat waiting. She recognized one of them, General Marcus Hartwell, 3 stars, director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, a man whose name appeared in classified briefings but never in public record. He had the kind of face that cameras seemed to slide off of, unremarkable, forgettable, perfectly designed for someone who trafficked in secrets. The woman to his left wore a tailored suit with no jewelry, no badges, nothing to indicate who she was or what agency she represented. Her eyes were the color of winter ice. The man on the right was younger, maybe 40, with the kind of tan that came from actual fieldwork, not a golf course. His hands showed old scars. A case officer, Rachel guessed. CIA, probably. The kind who did things that never made it into official reports. "Sit down, Commander," General Hartwell said. She sat. No one offered coffee. No one made small talk. This wasn't that kind of meeting. "What do you know about the current situation in the Middle East?" the woman asked. "Only what's in the briefings, ma'am," Rachel replied. "Coalition forces engaged in hostile territory. Conventional warfare against a regime that's been designated as a threat to regional stability and American interests." "That's the public version," the woman said. "Here's the real version. The war is going exactly as planned. Every bombing run, every advance, every casualty, all according to script. Except for one problem." She slid a photograph across the table. Rachel looked at it. An older man, maybe 65, with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades in the desert sun. He wore civilian clothes, standing in what looked like a crowded marketplace surrounded by people who seemed to genuinely respect him. "Supreme Leader Karim al-Rashid," the woman continued. "Former general, current head of state, and the only obstacle standing between controlled regime change and complete regional destabilization." Rachel kept her expression neutral. "I'm not a politician, ma'am. I'm a SEAL." "We know exactly what you are," Commander General Hartwell said. "We've read your file. 14 years of service, 6 tours, 43 confirmed eliminations at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. You've operated in 12 countries under 16 different cover identities. You've never failed a mission. You've never questioned an order. That's why you're here. The case officer spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. That made it worse somehow. Supreme Leader al-Rashid is scheduled to appear at a public event in 72 hours. A peace rally, ironically. He'll be walking through the old quarter of the capital, surrounded by civilians, protected by his personal security detail. Intelligence indicates he'll be exposed for approximately 14 seconds as he crosses the main plaza. He slid another photograph across the table. An aerial view of an ancient city buildings, packed tight, narrow streets, rooftops at varying heights. There's a bell tower here, he pointed. 400 meters from the plaza. Direct line of sight. Perfect position for a shooter with your skills. Rachel felt something cold spreading through her chest. You're asking me to assassinate a head of state. We're not asking, the woman said. This is a direct order from the highest levels of government. Levels you don't even know exist. Al-Rashid dies in 72 hours, or the entire regional strategy collapses. Millions of lives hang in the balance. What about the Geneva Conventions, Rachel asked. What about... Commander, General Hartwell's voice was sharp as a blade. There are no conventions at this level. There are no rules. There is only what must be done to protect American interests and American lives. You took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is that oath being called in. Silence filled the room like smoke. You'll have a 4-person team, and the case officer said. All Tier 1 operators. All volunteers who understand the nature of classified direct action. You'll infiltrate via halo jump, at night proceed to the target zone, establish position, take the shot, and exfiltrate before local forces can respond. Total time on ground less than 6 hours. He slid an encrypted tablet across the table. Mission parameters, equipment, manifest exfiltration protocols, and rules of engagement. You have 30 seconds to accept or decline. If you decline, you'll be reassigned to a training post in Alaska, and this meeting never happened. If you accept, you become a ghost. No name, no rank, no official existence. If you are captured, we will disavow all knowledge. If you fail, we will classify it as rogue action, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a black site prison. Rachel looked at the photograph of al-Rashid again. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like somebody's grandfather. But she had learned long ago that monsters rarely look like monsters. Evil wore suits and smiled for cameras, and justified itself with words like necessity and greater good. The government doesn't need to be right, she heard herself say. It just needs to win. It was something she had told herself 100 times before. A mantra that had carried her through missions, that kept her awake at night, through orders that made her stomach turn, through the slow erosion of everything she thought she believed in. General Hartwell smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. That's exactly right, Commander. Welcome to Cardinal. The woman stood up. One more thing. If you fail, we'll say you never existed. Your service record will be erased. Your family will be told you died in a training accident years ago. Every trace of Rachel Cole will vanish from every database, every photograph, every memory. You'll become a ghost story that other operators tell to scare each other. Do you understand? Rachel stood as well. Her voice was steady. Yes, ma'am. Good. You leave in 18 hours. Dismissed. The elevator ride back up felt longer than the descent. When Rachel stepped back into the parking garage, dawn was breaking over Virginia Beach. The world looked exactly the same as it had 2 hours ago. But something inside her had shifted. She couldn't name it yet, didn't want to name it. Naming things gave them power, made them real. The SUV took her back to her apartment. She had 16 hours to prepare for a mission that would either make her the most effective operator in SEAL history or condemn her to a death without name, without honor, without acknowledgement. She spent the first hour cleaning her weapons, the second hour reviewing the mission parameters, the third hour staring at the photograph of Karim al-Rashid and trying to see a monster. By the fourth hour, she had stopped trying. The team assembled at a classified airfield at 2200 hours. 4 operators, including Rachel, no names exchanged, no personal information. They were designated by call signs, only Cardinal 1 through Cardinal 4. Rachel was Cardinal 1. Cardinal 2 was a stocky man in his late 30s, with the build of someone who had spent his life carrying heavy loads over impossible terrain. Rangers, Rachel guessed from the way he moved. He checked his gear with the kind of methodical precision that came from watching friends die because of a loose strap or an unchecked battery. Cardinal 3 was younger, maybe 30, with the lean, dangerous look of a recon marine. He had scars on his hands and a way of watching the shadows that suggested he had spent significant time in places where the shadows watch back. Cardinal 4 was the only one who spoke. Heard you made a shot in Kandahar at 2,300 meters. Wind speed variable target, moving thermal distortion from ground heat. One shot, one kill. Rachel didn't respond. Operational security meant never confirming or denying past missions. Respect, Cardinal 4 said quietly, and that was the end of the conversation. The C-130 was waiting on the tarmac, engines already running. No markings, no identification numbers, nothing to indicate what country it belonged to or where it had come from. Ghost planes for ghost soldiers. They boarded in silence. The flight took 6 hours. No one slept. Rachel used the time to memorize every detail of the mission plan, every measurement, every contingency. The bell tower was 387 meters from the target zone. Wind patterns in the old quarter were unpredictable due to the narrow streets creating turbulence. Local security forces would respond within 90 seconds of the shot. The exfiltration route required navigating through a residential area where civilians would be present. Acceptable collateral damage 0. Acceptable failure rate 0. Acceptable question 0. At 0400 hours, the loadmaster gave the signal. They checked each other's parachutes with the ritualistic thoroughness that separated professionals from corpses. Rachel's pack weighed 97 pounds rifle ammunition, survival gear, communications equipment, and enough water to last 3 days if the exfiltration went wrong. The rear ramp opened. 30,000 feet below the desert was a dark ocean dotted with the sparse lights of cities that had stood for thousands of years before America existed and would stand for thousands of years after. Cardinal team, you are green for jump, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. God be with you. Rachel stepped into the void. The free fall lasted 90 seconds. 90 seconds of pure silence, pure darkness, pure focus. This was the moment she lived for, the instant before the chute deployed, when she was nobody. Nothing, just a body falling through space with no past and no future. Then the chute cracked open and she was back in the mission. They landed in a dried riverbed 12 kilometers outside the city. The night was cold and absolutely quiet. No insects, no wind, just the sound of their own breathing and the rustle of parachutes being buried in the sand. Cardinal 2 took point. They moved in tactical formation through the darkness using night vision and hand signals. The city approached slowly, a sprawl of ancient architecture and modern concrete of minarets and power lines of a civilization trying to bridge 5,000 years of history. They could hear it before they saw it. Explosions in the distance, the rumble of aircraft, the sharp crack of anti-aircraft fire reaching for targets they would never hit. The war was happening somewhere else, but its echoes reached everywhere. The old quarter was darker than the rest of the city. Power outages, Rachel realized. Deliberate or collateral, it didn't matter. Darkness was an advantage. They moved through narrow streets that smelled of cooking fires and dust and something else. Something she recognized from too many war zones, the smell of fear, of people who knew that violence was coming and could do nothing to stop it. A dog barked. Cardinal 3 froze, hand going to his sidearm. Rachel shook her head. The dog quieted. They reached the bell tower at 0547 hours, 13 minutes ahead of schedule. The building was abandoned, locked, probably hadn't been used in decades. Cardinal 2 picked the lock with practiced ease. Inside, the air was thick with dust and pigeon droppings. Stone stairs spiraled upward into darkness. They climbed in single-file weapons, ready moving with the slow, deliberate patience of people who knew that haste led to graves. The bell chamber was perfect. 4 narrow windows overlooking the plaza. Stone walls 3 feet thick that would muffle the sound of a rifle shot. Sight lines that offered a clear view of the entire target zone. Rachel set up her position at the western window. She assembled her rifle with the kind of muscle memory that came from 10,000 repetitions stock barrel scope suppressor. The weapon became an extension of her body, as familiar as her own heartbeat. Cardinal 2 and Cardinal 3 set up security positions. Cardinal 4 established communications. Cardinal 1, this is Cardinal Nest, radio check. Cardinal Nest, this is Cardinal 1, 5x5. Copy. Target acquisition window opens in 47 hours. Weather forecast is favorable. Local security is on high alert due to the peace rally. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Confirm. Confirmed, Rachel said. ROE acknowledged. She didn't say what she was thinking. That rules of engagement seemed like a dark joke when the engagement itself was an assassination. The sun rose slowly over the ancient city. Through her scope, Rachel could see people beginning their day. A woman hanging laundry on a rooftop. An old man opening a shop that sold copper pots. Children running through the streets with a soccer ball that had been patched so many times it was more tape than leather. Normal life. The kind of life that would be shattered in 47 hours when a bullet traveling at 2,700 feet per second would end a man's life and change the course of history. Cardinal 2 was watching her. First time, he asked quietly. First time for what? Headshot on a stationary political target. It's different than combat. The waiting gets to people. Rachel adjusted her scope. I don't wait, I prepare. He nodded slowly. That's good. That's the right answer. But prepare for this too afterward. It doesn't go away. The politicians tell you it's necessary. The generals tell you it's strategy. Your teammates tell you it's just another mission. But late at night when you're alone, you'll see his face. You'll wonder if there was another way. You'll ask yourself if you're a soldier or a murderer. There's a difference. There used to be, Cardinal 2 said, before they started giving us missions like this. Now I'm not so sure. He turned away before she could respond. The first day passed in silence. They rotated watch-8 rations that tasted like cardboard and regret and waited. Rachel spent hours looking through her scope, learning the patterns of the plaza below, the way the light changed as the sun moved across the sky, the way people moved through the space, the way life continued oblivious to the fact that death was watching from 400 meters away. On the second day, something changed. A group of soldiers appeared in the plaza. Not the regular security forces, these were different. They moved with the cautious deliberation of men who had seen real combat. They weren't there to protect anyone. They were there to control. Through her scope, Rachel watched them set up checkpoints, watched them search civilians, watched them separate a young man from his family and push him against a wall with rifle barrels against his spine. The young man wasn't resisting. He had his hands up. He was saying something that Rachel couldn't hear from this distance. One of the soldiers hit him with a rifle butt. The young man fell. His mother screamed and tried to reach him. Another soldier grabbed her, threw her down. Rachel's finger moved toward her trigger. Cardinal 3 was beside her instantly. Stand down, Cardinal 1. That's not our mission. They're assaulting civilians. Not our mission. Rachel forced herself to breathe. Forced herself to remember the briefing. Forced herself to believe that there was a reason for all of this, a greater good that justified turning away from injustice right in front of her eyes. But the young man was still on the ground, and his mother was still screaming. And Rachel was doing nothing. This is wrong, she said quietly. Cardinal 3's voice was equally quiet. Maybe, but it's not ours to fix. We fix what we're told to fix. That's the job. She wanted to argue, wanted to say that being a soldier meant protecting people, not watching them suffer. Wanted to ask when they had stopped being warriors and become weapons that other people aimed at their convenience. But she had no answers. So she watched the young man get dragged away, watched his mother collapse in the plaza, watched the other civilians hurry past with their heads down, pretending not to see. The same way Rachel was pretending not to see. That night she couldn't sleep. Cardinal 2 was on watch. Cardinal 3 and Cardinal 4 were resting. Rachel sat in the darkness of the bell tower and stared at nothing. You're thinking too much, Cardinal 4 said from the shadows. She hadn't realized he was awake. I'm thinking exactly enough, she replied. It's a trap. Thinking. They train us to follow orders because thinking gets people killed. Hesitation gets people killed. Questions get people killed. So we don't think, we just do. And that makes us what, robots? It makes us professional. It makes us effective. It makes us able to do the hard things that keep the world from burning down. Rachel turned to look at him. In the darkness, she could only see his outline. Does it, though, keep the world from burning? Because from where I'm sitting, the world looks pretty damn flammable. Cardinal 4 was quiet for a long moment. I had a philosophy professor once, he finally said. Before I enlisted, smart guy, he used to say that moral certainty was the most dangerous thing in the world. That the people who were absolutely sure they were right were the ones who caused the most suffering. He said the only ethical position was radical doubt, always questioning, always uncertain, always aware that you might be wrong. What happened to him? He died in the towers on September 11th. After that, I stopped doubting. I started doing. Rachel didn't know what to say to that. The point is, Cardinal 4 continued, doubt is a luxury. We don't get luxuries, we get missions. And if we start doubting missions, we become useless. Worse than useless, we become liabilities. So we just follow orders, no matter what. No matter what, he's confirmed, because the alternative is chaos. And chaos kills a lot more people than following orders ever did. Rachel wanted to believe that, had believed it for 14 years, had built her entire career on that foundation. But the foundation was starting to crack. She could feel it, small fractures spreading through everything she had built. Not big enough to collapse yet, but big enough to notice. Big enough to worry about. The third day arrived, 6 hours until the mission window opened. Rachel checked her rifle for the 100th time, checked her ammunition, checked her breathing, her heartbeat, her focus. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. She was the most dangerous weapon in America's arsenal, pointed at a target that intelligence had designated as a threat to national security. All she had to do was pull the trigger. Through her scope, the plaza was filling with people. The peace rally was gathering momentum. Thousands of civilians, men, women, children, carrying signs written in Arabic script that Rachel couldn't read but could guess the meaning of. Peace, hope, end the war. They looked so hopeful. It made her sick, because in a few hours their hope would die along with their leader, and the war would continue. And the people giving orders from rooms without windows would smile and call it strategy. Cardinal 1, this is Cardinal Nest, final brief. Rachel keyed her radio. Go ahead. Target will enter the plaza from the eastern gate at 1700 hours local time. He will walk a predetermined route through the crowd. Window of opportunity is 14 seconds as he crosses the open area in front of the fountain. Take the shot when you have clear acquisition. Confirm. Rachel looked through her scope at the fountain. Clear line of sight, no obstructions. Easy shot for someone with her skills. Too easy. Confirmed, she said. Clear acquisition 14-second window. Copy that. Weather is clear, wind is negligible. This is a green light mission. Execute at your discretion. Cardinal Nest out. The radio clicked off. Rachel settled into her shooting position. Controlled her breathing. Slowed her heartbeat. Entered the zone where nothing existed except the target and the trigger and the space between them. She was ready. The minutes crawled past. Cardinal 2, Cardinal 3, and Cardinal 4 held their positions. Nobody spoke. Professional soldiers doing professional work. At 16:58 hours, movement at the eastern gate. Security detail emerging first. 12 men in civilian clothes with the visible bulge of concealed weapons. They scanned the crowd, the rooftops, the windows. None of them looked at the bell tower. Then he appeared. Supreme Leader Karim al-Rashid walked into the plaza like a man without fear. He didn't hide behind bodyguards. Didn't wear a bulletproof vest. He walked among his people with his arms open, greeting them, touching their hands, listening to their words. Rachel tracked him through her scope. He was 66 years old. The intelligence file had listed his height as 5'9" weight, approximately 160 pounds. Former military officer, former resistance fighter, former prisoner of war, current head of state, current target. She watched him stop to talk to an old woman. Watched him smile at a child who offered him a flower. Watched him place his hand on the shoulder of a young man who said something that made him laugh. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone who genuinely cared about the people around him. Cardinal 1, do you have acquisition? Cardinal 4's voice in her ear. Affirmative, I have acquisition. Standing by. Rachel's finger rested on the trigger. Her breathing was perfectly controlled. Her heartbeat was steady at 56 beats per minute. Every variable was calculated. Every measurement was precise. All she had to do was squeeze. One squeeze, one shot, one death. And the mission would be complete. Al-Rashid was moving toward the fountain. The crowd parted for him like water around a stone. He was exposed now, walking through the open area exactly as intelligence had predicted. 14 seconds. 13. 12. Rachel's crosshairs were centered on his chest. Center mass, instant incapacitation, death within seconds. 11. 10. Through the scope, she saw him stop. Saw him turn to face a woman who was holding a baby. Saw him reach out and touch the child's face with such gentleness that it made her throat tight. 9. 8. The woman was crying, tears of joy, Rachel realized, because her leader had acknowledged her child, because in a world of violence and chaos, someone had shown a moment of kindness. 7. 6. Rachel's finger tightened on the trigger. This was it. This was the moment. This was what 14 years of training had prepared her for. 5. 4. She could see his face clearly now. Not the face of a monster, not the face of a tyrant, just the face of a man who was tired and old and trying to hold together a country that was being torn apart by forces he couldn't control. 3, 2. The woman with the baby said something. Al-Rashid smiled. It was a real smile, not a politician's smile, not a performance, real. 1. Rachel's finger froze on the trigger. She couldn't do it. Not because she was afraid, not because she doubted her skill, but because something deeper than training, deeper than orders, deeper than 14 years of following the chain of command was screaming that this was wrong. This wasn't combat. This wasn't defense. This was murder dressed up in classified briefings and operational necessity. Cardinal 1, you are outside the window. Confirm status. Rachel didn't respond. She kept her crosshairs on target, kept her breathing controlled, but her finger wouldn't move. Al-Rashid walked past the fountain. The moment was gone. The window had closed. Cardinal 1, respond. What is your status? Rachel finally keyed her radio. No shot. Target was obscured by civilians. Silence on the other end. Then Cardinal Nest's voice, cold and flat. Negative. Satellite coverage shows clear line of sight for the full 14-second window. Explain. Before Rachel could answer, Cardinal 2 was beside her. This is Cardinal 2. Confirm no shot. Wind turbulence created unacceptable deviation risk. Request permission to abort and reassess. Another pause. Permission denied. Target will be exposed again at the western exit in approximately 8 minutes. Stand by for second window. Rachel looked at Cardinal 2. He met her eyes and gave the smallest shake of his head. He knew she had frozen, knew she had failed, but he was covering for her. The question was why. They waited in silence. Al-Rashid continued through the crowd. The peace rally grew louder. Speeches were being given in Arabic that Rachel couldn't understand but could feel. Passion, hope, desperation. Please, they seemed to be saying, please let this war end. Please let our children grow up in peace. Please let there be something better than this endless cycle of violence. Second window opening in 90 seconds, Cardinal Nest announced. Rachel repositioned. The western exit was farther away 430 meters. More difficult shot, higher wind variance, but still well within her capabilities. She found Al-Rashid in her scope. He was moving toward the exit now, security detail surrounding him more closely. The rally was ending. People were beginning to disperse. 60 seconds. Rachel's finger returned to the trigger. She could do this. She had to do this. Failure meant disgrace, meant becoming a liability, meant everything Cardinal 4 had warned about. 45 seconds. But what did success mean? Killing a man who seemed to genuinely want peace, starting a chain of events that would destabilize an entire region, following orders that came from people who would never face the consequences of those orders. 30 seconds. Al-Rashid paused at the exit, turned back to wave at the crowd. They cheered, not the orchestrated cheer of a propaganda rally, a real cheer from people who actually believed in him. 15 seconds. Rachel's breathing was still controlled. Her heartbeat was still steady, but something inside her was breaking. All the certainty she had built her life on was crumbling like sand. The government doesn't need to be right. It just needs to win. But what if the government was wrong? What if winning meant losing everything that made winning worthwhile? 10 seconds. Cardinal 1, you are green for shot. Rachel's finger wouldn't move. 9, 8, 7. She saw his face in perfect clarity, saw the lines of worry and exhaustion, saw a man carrying the weight of a nation on his shoulders, saw someone who was trying against impossible odds to do the right thing. 6, 5. And Rachel realized with absolute certainty she couldn't kill him. Not because she was weak, because she was finally, after 14 years, strong enough to refuse. 4, 3. Taking the shot, she said into her radio, but her finger didn't move. 2, 1. Al-Rashid passed through the gate and disappeared into the building beyond. The window was closed. The mission was failed. And Rachel Cole, for the first time in her career, had deliberately disobeyed a direct order. Cardinal 1, report. Did you take the shot? Rachel's voice was steady. Negative. Target is down. It was a lie, and everyone on the channel knew it. But before Cardinal Nest could respond, all hell broke loose. An explosion rocked the plaza, then another, then a third. Screaming, chaos, people running in all directions. Through her scope, Rachel saw bodies on the ground, saw blood, saw the peace rally turning into a massacre. This is Cardinal Nest. SEAL team is compromised. Local security forces are responding to explosion signatures. Initiate emergency exfiltration immediately. Cardinal 3 was already packing up equipment. Cardinal 4 was at the stairs, weapon ready. Cardinal 2 looked at Rachel. Whatever you just did, he said quietly, you better be damn sure it was worth it. Rachel picked up her rifle. I'm not sure of anything anymore, she said, but I'm sure I wasn't going to murder that man. They descended the stairs at speed. The street outside was pandemonium, sirens wailing, security forces converging. And somewhere in the chaos, explosions that had nothing to do with Rachel's mission and everything to do with someone else's agenda. As they melted into the shadows, one thought burned in Rachel's mind. Who set off those bombs? And why did it happen the exact moment she failed to take her shot? The mission was supposed to be simple. Get in, eliminate the target, get out. But nothing about this was simple anymore. And Rachel Cole was about to discover that the real enemy wasn't in front of her scope. It was behind the orders she had spent her entire career following without question. The exfiltration route had been planned for stealth, not speed. But stealth was no longer an option. Cardinal 2 led the team through the narrow streets of the old quarter at a controlled run. Not fast enough to draw attention, but fast enough to put distance between them and the bell tower before local security forces established a perimeter. The explosions had changed everything. Smoke was rising from 3 different locations in the plaza. Emergency vehicles were converging. Soldiers were establishing checkpoints. And somewhere in that chaos, Supreme Leader al-Rashid was either dead wounded or being rushed to safety. Rachel keyed her radio. Cardinal Nest requesting sitrep. What the hell just happened? Static. Cardinal Nest respond. Nothing. Cardinal 4 checked his equipment. We're being jammed. Local military frequency saturation. They shut down the entire communications grid. Then we're on our own, Cardinal 2 said. Emergency rally point is compromised if they lock down the city. We need to find cover and reassess. They turned into an alley that smelled of rotting vegetables and sewage. Overhead, a helicopter thundered past, searchlight cutting through the smoke-filled sky. Not American, local security forces hunting for whoever had set off the bombs. Or hunting for them. A door opened ahead. An old man stood in the doorway, eyes wide with fear. He saw their weapons, their tactical gear, their foreign faces. He started to shout. Cardinal 3's hand was on his sidearm instantly. No, Rachel said sharply. Stand down. She lowered her own weapon and raised her hands. Spoke in broken Arabic that she had learned over multiple deployments. Please, we mean no harm. We need shelter. The old man looked at her like she was insane. And maybe she was. American soldiers asking for help in a city they had been bombing for weeks. It was absurd. But the old man didn't slam the door. He looked past them at the chaos in the streets, looked at the smoke rising over the plaza. Then he stepped aside. Quickly, he said in heavily accented English, before someone sees. They moved inside. The space was tiny, a single room with a curtain separating a sleeping area, a small stove, shelves stocked with rice and canned goods that looked like they had been rationed for months. The walls were cracked. The ceiling leaked. This was poverty that most Americans couldn't imagine. And this man was risking his life to shelter them. Cardinal 2 posted security at the single window. Cardinal 3 checked the back door. Cardinal 4 was trying to reestablish communications. Rachel faced the old man. Why are you helping us? He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much suffering. Because you did not shoot me when you could have, he said simply. And because I am tired of killing. All of us are tired of killing. Outside, the sirens were getting closer. The old man moved to his stove and began heating water. Tea, he said. You drink tea, yes, while we wait for the soldiers to pass. It was surreal. Minutes ago, Rachel had been seconds away from assassination. Now she was being offered tea by a man who should be her enemy. Cardinal 4 got his radio working on a backup frequency. Repeat all. Cardinal assets evacuate immediately. Local forces are conducting door-to-door searches. Multiple civilian casualties from the explosions. High-value target status unknown. Exfiltration window closing in 90 minutes. Proceed to alternate rally point Delta 7. Authentication code. The signal cut off again. Delta 7 is 12 kilometers from here, Cardinal 2 said, through hostile territory, with every security force in the city on high alert. So we wait until dark, Cardinal 3 suggested. Move under cover of night. Rachel shook her head. Dark is in 6 hours. The exfiltration window is 90 minutes. If we miss it, we're stuck in country with no support, no resupply, and every intelligence agency in the region looking for us. Then we move now, Cardinal 4 said. Fast and aggressive, fighting exit if necessary. And get a lot of civilians killed in the crossfire, Rachel said. No, there has to be another way. The old man handed her a cup of tea. It was hot and sweet and tasted like cardamom. "You are looking for a way out of the city," he said. It wasn't a question. Rachel met his eyes. "Yes, I can help. But first you must tell me, are you responsible for the bombs?" "No," Rachel said immediately. "We had nothing to do with that." The old man studied her face. Whatever he saw there must have convinced him. "My nephew drives a truck," he said. "He delivers food to the refugee camps outside the city. He leaves in 1 hour. If you can hide in his truck, he can take you past the checkpoints. The soldiers, they know him. They do not search his vehicle." It was risky. It meant trusting a stranger. It meant being completely vulnerable during transport. It meant relying on someone who had every reason to betray them. But it was also their only real option. "Why would your nephew take that risk?" Rachel asked. The old man's expression was infinitely sad. "Because his daughter was in the plaza today. Because she wanted to hear the supreme leader speak about peace. Because she is now in the hospital with shrapnel wounds and burns, and he knows that peace is the only thing that can prevent more children from being hurt." Rachel felt something crack open inside her chest. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. The old man nodded. "War makes everyone sorry, even soldiers." The nephew arrived 40 minutes later. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of exhausted eyes that came from too many long days and too little sleep. He looked at the American soldiers in his uncle's home with an expression Rachel couldn't read. Not hate, not fear, just weariness. "My uncle says you did not plant the bombs," he said in better English than his uncle's. "Is this true?" "It's true," Rachel confirmed. "Then who did—" "I don't know, but I intend to find out." The young man considered this. Then he gestured toward the door. "My truck is outside. I have crates of vegetables and rice. You can hide beneath them. But if we are stopped, if the soldiers search thoroughly, I cannot protect you. You understand." "We understand," Rachel said. "Thank you." "Do not thank me," he replied. "I am not doing this for you. I am doing this for my daughter, so that maybe someday she will not have to know what it is like to run from bombs and hide from soldiers." They loaded into the truck bed and covered themselves with burlap sacks and crates. It was cramped and hot and smelled like onions. Cardinal 2 had his weapon ready. Cardinal 3 had his hand on a grenade just in case. Cardinal 4 was monitoring radio traffic. Rachel lay in the darkness and thought about the old man's daughter. Wondered how badly she was hurt. Wondered if she would survive. Wondered how many other daughters and sons and mothers and fathers had been hurt today because someone had decided that peace was less profitable than war. The truck started moving. They passed through the city slowly. Every few minutes, the truck would stop checkpoints. Rachel could hear muffled voices, sometimes aggressive, sometimes routine. The nephew's voice responding with the tired patience of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Once she heard dogs barking, security forces with K9 units. Cardinal 3's hand tightened on his grenade. But the dogs passed, the checkpoint cleared, the truck moved on. After 40 minutes, the sounds of the city faded. The truck picked up speed. Rural road, Rachel guessed. They were out of the immediate search zone. 10 minutes later, the truck stopped. The engine died. The nephew's voice, "You can come out now. We are at the refugee camp. No soldiers here. Just people who have nowhere else to go." They emerged from beneath the crates. The sun was setting over a sprawl of tents and makeshift shelters that stretched for what looked like miles. Thousands of people displaced by war, living in conditions that made the old man's single room look luxurious. Children played in the dirt between tents. Women cooked over small fires. Men stood in groups smoking and talking with the kind of quiet desperation of people who had lost everything and were waiting for more loss. This was the cost of war, not the strategic bombing and the military victories. This, human beings reduced to survival, families torn apart, lives destroyed by decisions made in rooms they would never see by people whose names they would never know. Rachel felt sick. "Your rally point is that way," the nephew said, pointing toward a rocky outcrop about 3 kilometers away. "You should arrive before dark, but I must ask you something." "What?" "When you return to your country, when you make your reports, when you tell your leaders what you saw here, will you tell them about my daughter? Will you tell them about these people? Will you tell them that we do not want war, we just want to live?" Rachel looked at the refugee camp, at the children with hollow eyes and swollen bellies, at the mothers trying to create normalcy in hell, at the fathers who had failed to protect their families and were being destroyed by that failure. "Yes," she said, "I'll tell them." The nephew smiled sadly. "You are lying, but it is a kind lie. Go now. before it gets dark and the bandits come out. They moved through the refugee camp in silence. People watched them pass but said nothing. American soldiers were not uncommon here. This was a war zone. Foreign troops were part of the landscape. But as Rachel walked, she felt their eyes on her, felt their judgment, not hate exactly, just awareness, that she represented the force that had destroyed their homes, that she wore the uniform of the country that had decided their suffering was acceptable collateral damage in pursuit of strategic objectives. Cardinal 2 must have felt it too. "This is wrong," he said quietly. "All of it. We're supposed to be the good guys. But look at this. Look at what our strategic objectives have done." "We don't set policy," Cardinal 4 said. "We execute it." "That's what the Nazi soldiers said." Cardinal 2 shot back. "Just following orders, just executing policy. You can't compare." "Can I?" Cardinal 2 stopped walking. "We were sent to assassinate a head of state during a peace rally. We're operating in a country that never attacked us. We're supporting a war that's creating refugee camps full of starving children. At what point do we stop pretending we're heroes and admit we're just hired guns for people who profit from chaos?" Cardinal 4's face was dark. "You're out of line." "No, I'm finally seeing straight. And what I see makes me want to burn my uniform and walk into the desert until I forget what I've done in the name of following orders." They stared at each other. The tension was thick enough to cut. Rachel stepped between them. "Both of you stand down. We're not having this conversation in the middle of a hostile territory with 90 minutes until exfiltration. Move out. We'll sort this later." They moved, but the argument wasn't over. It was just deferred. The rally point was a cave system in the Rocky Hills. Cardinal Nest had pre-positioned supplies there, water, ammunition, communications equipment, and a satellite uplink that would coordinate their extraction. They arrived with 20 minutes to spare. Cardinal 4 established the uplink while the others took defensive positions. The encryption protocols took 7 minutes to initialize. When the connection finally established, a familiar voice came through. "General Hartwell, Cardinal Team report status." Cardinal 4 responded, "All personnel alive and mobile. We are at Rally Point Delta 7 awaiting extraction." "What is the status of the primary objective?" Silence. Cardinal 4 looked at Rachel. She was team leader. This was her call. Rachel keyed the radio. Primary objective was not completed. Target survived. The pause on the other end was long enough to make her stomach clench. "Explain." "Multiple complications. Civilian density was higher than intelligence predicted. Target security detail was more alert than anticipated. And approximately 3 minutes before the optimal shooting window, unknown actors detonated 3 explosive devices in the plaza, causing mass casualties and lockdown of the entire security grid." "We're aware of the explosions," Hartwell said. His voice was cold. "What we're not aware of is why a Tier 1 operator with your record failed to adapt and complete the mission." Rachel chose her words carefully. "Sir, with respect, adapting would have required taking a shot through civilians or waiting for a secondary window that never materialized due to the security lockdown. I assessed that mission completion was not achievable without unacceptable collateral damage and significant risk of compromise." Another pause. Cardinal 2 confirmed team leader's assessment. Cardinal 2 didn't hesitate. "Confirmed, sir. Shot was not feasible given the circumstances." Cardinal 3. "Confirmed." Cardinal 4. Cardinal 4's jaw tightened. "Confirmed, sir. They were lying for her, protecting her, and that meant they were putting their own careers on the line." "I see," Hartwell said. "Stand by for extraction. ETA 40 minutes. And Cardinal 1, when you return, you and I are going to have a very detailed conversation about mission parameters and operational judgment." The radio clicked off. "He knows," Cardinal 4 said quietly. "He knows you had the shot and didn't take it." "Then why didn't he say so?" Cardinal 3 asked. "Because he can't prove it," Cardinal 2 said. "Not without satellite footage. And if satellite footage shows she had a clear shot, and it also shows who really set off those bombs, which raises some very interesting questions about timing and coordination." Rachel felt cold. "You think the bombs were deliberate part of the mission?" "I think someone wanted that plaza to turn into a bloodbath," Cardinal 2 said. "The question is, who benefits from al-Rashid looking like he can't protect his own people? Who benefits from the peace rally turning into a massacre?" The pieces started falling into place in Rachel's mind. "The explosions happened right when I was supposed to take the shot," she said slowly. "If I had killed al-Rashid, everyone would have assumed the assassination and the bombs were connected. A coordinated attack by American forces. It would have destroyed any chance of peace. would have unified his country against us, would have turned a regional conflict into total war, which would have been very profitable for certain defense contractors and oil companies, Cardinal Two said, and very useful for politicians who need an enemy to justify military budgets. You're talking about a conspiracy at the highest levels of government, Cardinal Four said. You're saying our own people set us up. I'm saying someone did, Cardinal Two replied. And I'm saying that someone has access to mission planning, satellite coverage, and the resources to plant bombs in a heavily secured area. Rachel's mind was racing. The woman in the conference room with the ice-cold eyes, the case officer with the gentle voice and scarred hands, the briefing room that didn't exist, the orders that came from levels she didn't even know existed. We need proof, she said. We need evidence before we start making accusations. We need to survive the next 40 minutes, Cardinal Three said. Because if they set us up once, they might do it again. The extraction helicopter arrived exactly on time. A Black Hawk with no markings flying low and fast. It touched down just long enough for them to board, then was airborne again within seconds. Inside the cargo bay, Rachel couldn't hear herself think over the roar of the engines, but she could see the faces of her team. Cardinal Two looked exhausted. Cardinal Three looked angry. Cardinal Four looked afraid. They had all realized the same thing. They were expendable. They had always been expendable, but now they knew it. The flight took 3 hours. They landed at a forward operating base that Rachel didn't recognize, not the same airfield they had left from, different security protocols, different personnel. When they stepped off the helicopter, they were separated immediately. Cardinal One, come with me, a colonel she had never seen before said. The rest of you will be debriefed separately. Sir, with respect, we should be debriefed together. Cardinal Two started. That wasn't a request, soldier. Move out. They were split up and led to different buildings. Rachel was taken to a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and no windows. A holding cell dressed up as a debriefing room. She waited. 30 minutes passed, an hour, 2 hours. Classic interrogation technique. Make them wait, make them anxious, make them wonder what's happening. But Rachel had been through SEER training, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. She knew the games they played. When the door finally opened, it wasn't General Hartwell who entered. It was the woman from the conference room, the one with the ice-cold eyes. She sat down across from Rachel and placed a tablet on the table. Commander Cole, we have a problem. Ma'am, the problem is that you failed your mission. The problem is that Supreme Leader al-Rashid is still alive. The problem is that the peace rally, despite the unfortunate bombing incident, has actually strengthened his position. Public support for him is higher than ever. The international community is calling for immediate ceasefire negotiations. Everything we worked for is collapsing. Rachel kept her face neutral. With respect, ma'am, I followed my mission parameters. The shot was not achievable given... Don't! The woman's voice was sharp as broken glass. Don't insult my intelligence by repeating the lie you told on the radio. We have satellite footage, Commander. We know you had clear line of sight for the full 14-second window. We know you acquired the target. We know you chose not to fire. Rachel's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Then you also have footage of who planted the bombs. The woman smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The bombs were planted by local insurgents, militants who oppose al-Rashid's peace overtures. We have intelligence confirming this. Intelligence that was collected before or after the bombs were detonated. That's classified. So is the timing of those explosions. Classified enough that someone didn't want them showing up in after-action reports. The woman leaned forward. Let me be very clear about something, Commander. There are levels of classification above your clearance. There are operations within operations. There are strategic objectives that require tactical flexibility. Sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. That's by design. That's how we maintain operational security and maintain deniability, Rachel said quietly. Exactly. Deniability is a tool, a valuable tool, which brings us to your current situation. You failed your mission. That makes you a liability. But more than that, you're asking questions. Questions that suggest you don't understand your place in the larger strategic framework. Rachel met her eyes. I understand perfectly. I was sent to kill a man who's trying to make peace. And when I didn't, someone else tried to kill him with bombs that conveniently covered the fact that an American SEAL team had been in position to take the shot. That suggests the mission was never about assassination. It was about creating a provocation. making it look like American forces attacked a peace rally, justifying escalation. The woman didn't blink. That's an interesting theory, very imaginative, also completely unprovable, and dangerously close to sedition. It's only sedition if it's wrong. No, Commander. It's sedition if you say it out loud. The truth is irrelevant. What matters is what serves national security interests. And right now, you questioning your orders does not serve those interests. Rachel felt the walls closing in. So what happens now? You retire me, reassign me, make me disappear. The woman stood up. What happens now is you go home. You take 30 days leave. You see a therapist about your combat stress. You remember that you're a soldier who follows orders, not a philosopher who debates them. And when your leave is over, you return to duty with a clear understanding of what's expected of you. Understood? And if I don't want to return to duty, then you'll be subject to a thorough security review. Your clearances will be revoked. Your service record will be flagged. And you'll discover that civilian life is very difficult for people who know too much about classified operations and can't pass a background check. It was a threat wrapped in bureaucratic language. Fall in line or be destroyed. Rachel stood as well. I need to speak with my team. Your team has already been debriefed and returned to their units. You won't be working with them again. For security reasons, Cardinal Team has been disbanded. Of course it had. Separate them, isolate them, make sure they couldn't compare notes or build a unified story. May I be dismissed, ma'am? The woman picked up her tablet. You're dismissed, Commander. Enjoy your leave. And think very carefully about what kind of career you want to have when you return. Rachel was escorted out of the building through security checkpoints and eventually to a civilian SUV that drove her to a military airfield. From there, a cargo flight to a larger base. From there, a commercial flight to Norfolk. 32 hours after refusing to kill Supreme Leader al-Rashid, Rachel Cole walked into her empty apartment in Virginia Beach and stood in the middle of her living room trying to figure out who she was now. For 14 years, she had been a soldier, a warrior, a weapon. Now she was something else, a liability, a question mark, a problem to be managed. She pulled out her phone and found a blocked number already loaded in her recent calls. No name, no identification, just a number that had been left there by someone who wanted her to find it. She dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice she recognized, Cardinal 2. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. We need to talk, Rachel said, about what really happened, about who set those bombs, about what the hell we just walked into. I know, the others think so too. Cardinal 3 and Cardinal 4 both reached out. They're asking the same questions. Can we meet? Not on base, not anywhere official. They're watching us. Then where? Cardinal 2 was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. There's a diner in North Carolina, small town called Emerald Point. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. Don't use your credit cards. Cash only. And Rachel, yeah, if they're willing to blow up a peace rally to maintain control of a war, they're willing to do a lot worse to keep us quiet. Watch your back. The line went dead. Rachel stood in her apartment and looked at her reflection in the dark window. She didn't recognize herself anymore. The woman looking back at her was still dressed in uniform, still carried the same weapons, the same skills, the same training. But something fundamental had changed. She had looked through her scope at a man who should have been her enemy and seen a human being. She had been given a lawful order and had chosen to disobey. She had spent 14 years believing the government didn't need to be right, just needed to win. And now she was beginning to understand that winning at any cost meant losing everything that made victory meaningful. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. They're watching you. Be smart. Trust no one. The truth is worse than you think. Rachel deleted the message. Then she went to her closet and pulled out her go bag, the one she kept packed for emergency deployments. She unpacked it and repacked it with civilian clothes, cash she had saved over the years, and a clean handgun that wasn't registered to her name. If she was going to find out what really happened in that plaza, she needed to be ready to disappear. Because the people who gave the orders weren't going to let her just walk away. And Supreme Leader al-Rashid was still alive, which meant the job wasn't finished. Which meant someone somewhere was already planning the next move. Rachel just had to figure out what it was before it got her killed. She grabbed her keys and walked out of her apartment. The night was warm and humid, typical Virginia summer weather. The street was quiet, normal. But as she got into her car, she noticed a sedan parked 3 spaces down, tinted windows, engine off. But someone was sitting in the driver's seat, watching. Rachel started her car and pulled out slowly. The sedan didn't follow. But 2 blocks later, a different vehicle picked her up. Black SUV, government plates. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Rachel drove to a 24-hour gym parked, went inside, changed in the locker room, and exited through a side door that led to a strip mall. She walked 3 blocks, caught a bus, rode it to the end of the line, then took a taxi to a car rental place. 40 minutes later, she was driving a nondescript Honda Civic with temporary plates heading south toward North Carolina. The surveillance had been shaken. For now, she had 24 hours until the meeting at Emerald Point. 24 hours to figure out who she could trust and what she was willing to risk to find the truth. The highway stretched out ahead of her, empty and dark. Rachel drove through the night and thought about old men who offered tea to enemies, and young nephews who risked everything for peace, and children with hollow eyes in refugee camps. She thought about the woman with ice-cold eyes and the bombs that had exploded at exactly the wrong moment, and the mission that had never really been about assassination at all. And she thought about Supreme Leader Karim al-Rashid walking through a plaza with his arms open, greeting his people, touching a baby's face with such gentleness. She had been sent to kill him. Instead, she had saved him. And now someone was going to make her pay for that choice. But first, they would have to find her. And Rachel Cole had spent 14 years learning how to be a ghost. It was time to put those skills to use. The diner in Emerald Point was exactly what Rachel expected. Chrome fixtures, vinyl booths, a waitress who looked like she had been serving coffee since before Rachel was born. The kind of place where strangers stood out and locals noticed everything. She arrived 30 minutes early and took a booth in the back corner where she could watch both entrances. Ordered coffee and didn't touch it. Watched the parking lot through the window and counted the exits. Cardinal 2 arrived at 1955 hours alone and on foot. He slid into the booth across from her and spoke without preamble. Cardinal 3 is dead. Car accident 3 days ago. Single vehicle collision, lost control on a wet road, hit a tree at high speed, burned beyond recognition. Rachel felt the coffee go cold in her stomach. Accident. That's what the report says. But Cardinal 3 was a Marine recon driver. He'd navigated hostile terrain in Iraq during sandstorms. I find it hard to believe he lost control on a North Carolina highway. Cardinal 4. Haven't heard from him. Last contact was 2 days ago. He said he was being followed, said he had found something important and was going to pass it to a journalist. That was the last message. Rachel's hands tightened around the coffee cup. They're cleaning house, getting rid of anyone who knows what really happened. That's my assessment, Cardinal 2 said, which means we're both on borrowed time. So let's make it count. What do you know? Rachel leaned forward and kept her voice low. I know the mission was a setup from the beginning. I know those bombs were meant to go off, whether I took the shot or not. I know someone high up in the chain of command wanted that peace rally to turn into a massacre. What I don't know is who specifically gave the orders and what they're planning next. Cardinal 2 pulled out his phone, checked to make sure it was off, then slid a thumb drive across the table. I made copies of the mission files before they confiscated my equipment. Satellite footage, communication logs, classified briefings. Everything. I also did some digging into the woman who briefed us. Her name is Victoria Strand. She doesn't officially exist. No service record, no public profile, nothing. But I found references to her in sealed congressional testimony about black operations in Central America during the 1980s. She's what they call a continuity operative, someone who maintains institutional knowledge across administrations and works outside normal oversight. A cleaner, Rachel said. More than that. An architect. She doesn't just clean up messes, she creates them. Engineered coups, assassinations, false flag operations. All deniable, well classified so deep that most presidents probably don't even know about them. The waitress came by to refill coffee. They waited until she was out of earshot. So we're up against someone with 40 years of experience in black ops and unlimited resources, Rachel said. Great odds. It gets worse. I traced the funding for our mission. It didn't come through normal DoD channels. It came through a private security contractor called Aegis Strategic Solutions. They're a shell company owned by a larger firm that's owned by an even larger conglomerate. I went down the rabbit hole as far as I could. You know what I found at the bottom? What? The same 3 investment firms keep showing up. Billions of dollars flowing through defense contractors, oil companies, private military corporations. And every one of those firms has representatives who sit on advisory boards for think tanks that write policy papers about the necessity of maintaining American military presence in strategic regions. Rachel felt sick. It's not a conspiracy, it's just business. The most profitable business in the world, Cardinal Tu said. War and peace is bad for business. So when Supreme Leader al-Rashid started making serious peace overtures, when international pressure started building for a ceasefire, when it looked like the war might actually end, someone decided that couldn't be allowed to happen. So they tried to kill him and blame it on insurgents. More than that, they tried to make it look like American special forces attacked a peace rally. Think about what that would have done. Total war, complete destabilization, decades of conflict, trillions of dollars in military spending. Rachel stared at the thumb drive. We need to get this to someone who can do something about it. A journalist, a congressional oversight committee, someone. I tried, Cardinal Tu said quietly. I reached out to 3 different investigative journalists. 2 of them stopped returning my calls after the initial contact. The third one told me flat out that her editor killed the story, said it was too dangerous, too sensitive, that they couldn't verify the sources and wouldn't publish classified material. Then we go to Congress. With what proof? Stolen classified files that we obtained illegally, a dead teammate who conveniently can't testify, a missing operative who might already be dead too. Rachel, the people who orchestrated this have been doing it for decades. They know how to cover their tracks. They know how to neutralize threats, and we're threats now. The diner felt smaller suddenly. The walls closer. Rachel looked around at the normal people eating normal meals, living normal lives, completely unaware that there were people in the shadows making decisions that would send their sons and daughters to die in wars that existed primarily to generate profit. Then what do we do? She asked. Cardinal Tu was quiet for a long moment. There's one person who might be able to help. Someone who has the reach and the credibility to make this matter. Who? Supreme Leader al-Rashid himself. Rachel stared at him. You're joking. I'm not. Think about it. He knows something is wrong. He knows the peace rally was attacked. He knows American special forces were in the area. If we can get this information to him, if we can show him the evidence of who really ordered the hit and why, he can expose it to the international community. He can show that elements within the American government are actively sabotaging peace negotiations. It would create a scandal big enough that even the people who run the machine couldn't cover it up. That's assuming he believes us, assuming he doesn't just have us arrested as spies or kill us outright. It's assuming he wants peace more than revenge, Cardinal Tu said, which is a gamble, but it's the only gamble we have left. Rachel thought about the man she had seen through her scope, the way he touched the baby's face, the way he walked among his people without fear. How would we even contact him? We're on every watch list. We can't exactly fly back to the Middle East and knock on his door. No, but we can go through back channels. I still have contacts from my Ranger days. People who work in humanitarian organizations, NGOs, operating in conflict zones. There's a woman I know works for an international medical aid group. She has access to areas controlled by al-Rashid's government. If anyone can get a message through, it's her. And you trust her. I trust that she cares more about saving lives than protecting American interests, which makes her more reliable than anyone in our own chain of command right now. Rachel looked at the thumb drive again. Everything on there could end, her career, destroy her life, possibly get her killed. It was evidence of a conspiracy that went to the highest levels of power. Evidence that could bring down generals and politicians and business leaders. Or evidence that would simply disappear along with everyone who tried to expose it. I need to think about this, she said. Cardinal Tu nodded. Take the drive, look at the files, make your own decision. But Rachel, whatever you decide, do it fast, because they're not going to wait long before they come for us. He stood to leave. Where will you be? Rachel asked. Moving, different hotels every night, paying cash, no patterns, standard evasion protocols. He paused. There's something else you should know. I accessed your service record. They've already started the process to revoke your clearances, filed paperwork citing psychological instability and failure to maintain operational security. In about 72 hours, you'll officially be a security risk. After that, they can arrest you under national security laws, hold you indefinitely without charges. How long do I have? 3 days, maybe less. He met her eyes. Whatever you're going to do, do it now. He walked out of the diner and disappeared into the night. Rachel sat alone in the booth and looked at the thumb drive. 40 years of black operations, trillions of dollars, countless lives destroyed in service of maintaining a system that profited from chaos. And she was one person with a flash drive, and 72 hours before she became an enemy of the state. She paid in cash and left. The drive back to her hotel room took 20 minutes. She checked for surveillance, found none, but knew that didn't mean anything. If they wanted to watch her, they had resources she couldn't detect. In her room, she locked the door, closed the curtains, and plugged the thumb drive into her laptop. The files were encrypted, military-grade security, but Cardinal 2 had included the decryption key. What she found over the next 3 hours changed everything. Satellite footage showing the bombs being planted by men in civilian clothes carrying equipment bags. The timestamp was 18 hours before the peace rally, long enough to set up and arm the devices, short enough that detection was unlikely. Communication intercepts between Victoria Strand and an unknown party. Coded language, but the meaning was clear. Package is in place. Timing is critical. Green light on primary and secondary objectives. Financial records showing money flowing from Aegis Strategic Solutions to a network of offshore accounts. Millions of dollars. Payment for services rendered. And most damning of all, a memo, classified above top secret, marked for Victoria Strand's eyes only. The subject line was FIPOL, Maintaining Strategic Instability, Regional Assessment. Rachel read it twice. It laid out the strategic necessity of preventing peace in the Middle East, explained how a prolonged conflict maintained American military presence, secured access to oil resources, created markets for defense contractors, and provided justification for intelligence budgets. It discussed Supreme Leader al-Rashid as a problematic variable who was threatening regional control mechanisms through unexpected peace initiatives. The final paragraph was the worst. Recommendation: permanent elimination of current leadership through deniable direct action, timed to coincide with mass casualty event that can be attributed to local insurgents. This approach maintains strategic ambiguity while achieving necessary destabilization objectives. Recommends SEAL Team Asset for primary action with parallel contingency operations. It was signed with an initial S, not Victoria Strand, someone above her. Rachel's hands were shaking. This wasn't a rogue operation. This was policy, decided at the highest levels, implemented through people like her who were trained to follow orders without question. She had been a weapon, a tool, a means to an end for people who measured human lives in cost-benefit analyses and profit margins. And she had almost pulled the trigger. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello? Commander Cole." The voice was male, older, with the slight rasp of someone who had spent too many years smoking cigars and breathing recycled air in underground facilities. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" "My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I know what you have. I know what you're planning. And I know that you're making a mistake that will get a lot of people killed." Rachel's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "I've had this number since you joined SEAL Team 6. I've had every number, every address, every contact you've ever made. That's my job. Tracking assets, making sure they don't become liabilities." "You're with Strand." "I'm with the people who make Victoria Strand possible. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very unpleasant accident. So you're going to listen very carefully." Rachel wanted to hang up, wanted to throw the phone against the wall and run, but she needed to hear this. "I'm listening?" "Good. First, understand that the files you're looking at represent years of work by some of the smartest strategic minds in the world. People who understand that peace is a luxury the real world can't afford. Every time we pull back, every time we try to be the good guys, chaos fills the vacuum. Terrorists, warlords, regimes that make what we do look like charity work. The wars we fight prevent worse wars from happening." "That's the rationalization," Rachel said. "It's also bullshit." "Is it look at what happened every time we withdrew from a conflict zone, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. We left and things got worse. Not better. Worse. Because nature abhors a vacuum, Commander. And the vacuum of American power gets filled with things that make our worst decisions look benign. So you maintain chaos to prevent worse chaos. You kill peace advocates to prevent war. The logic is insane. The logic is necessary. And you know it. You've seen what happens when we're not there. You've operated in failed states. You've seen the mass graves and the rape camps and the children sold into slavery. And all of that happens when someone isn't holding the line, when someone isn't making the hard choices. Rachel thought about the refugee camp, the children with hollow eyes, the nephew whose daughter had been hurt by bombs. And who decides what's a hard choice versus what's just murder for profit? The voice sighed. That's the question that got Cardinal 3 killed. That's the question that will get you killed too if you're not careful. You want to be careful, don't you, Commander? It was a threat, clear and direct. What do you want? I want you to destroy the files. I want you to go back to Virginia Beach and take your 30 days leave and come back ready to serve your country without questioning every goddamn decision that's above your pay grade. I want you to remember that soldiers who follow orders get to retire with pensions and medals. Soldiers who don't follow orders get buried in unmarked graves. And if I refuse, then you'll have a car accident or a home invasion, or you'll commit suicide because of combat-related PTSD. The method doesn't matter. The result is the same. You disappear, the files disappear, the questions disappear, and the work continues. Rachel looked at the memo on her screen. The cold calculation of human lives measured in strategic value. You're asking me to let them get away with it, to let them keep killing for profit, to pretend I don't know what I know. I'm asking you to be smart. You're one person, one SEAL commander with a flash drive and a conscience. That's not enough to change anything. It's just enough to get you killed. Maybe, but maybe I can make enough noise before they kill me that someone else picks up where I left off. The voice turned cold. There is no one else, Commander. Everyone who was in that briefing room and is either dead, disappeared, or has decided that survival is more important than suicide. You're alone, and alone doesn't win wars. Rachel's finger was on the delete key. One press and the files would be gone. The evidence would vanish. She could go back to her life such as it was. Follow orders. Stop thinking. Stop questioning. Be a good soldier. But she wasn't a good soldier anymore. She was something else now. Something that scared the people who thought they controlled everything. I'm hanging up now, she said. And I'm going to do what I should have done the moment they told me to shoot an unarmed man at a peace rally. I'm going to tell the truth. You're going to die, the voice said flatly. Probably, but I'm going to die on my terms, not yours. She hung up. The phone immediately rang again. She turned it off, removed the battery, threw it in the trash. Then she copied the files to 3 separate drives, encrypted each one with different keys, and began making preparations. She had 72 hours to get the truth to someone who could use it. And she had an idea. The humanitarian aid worker that Cardinal 2 mentioned was named Dr. Sarah Chen. Rachel found her contact information in a directory of NGO personnel operating in conflict zones. It took 4 calls through intermediaries and 6 hours of waiting before Rachel finally got her on a secure line. Commander Cole? Dr. Chen's voice was wary. Michael said you might reach out. He also said you were in serious trouble. Michael, Cardinal 2's real name. Rachel filed that away. I am, but that's not why I'm calling. I have information about who really attacked the peace rally. Information that Supreme Leader al-Rashid needs to see. Why would I help you do that? Because I think you actually care about ending this war. And this information can do that. It exposes the people who profit from keeping it going. The people who will sabotage every peace initiative until there's nothing left but ash. Silence on the other end. Rachel could hear voices in the background, medical equipment beeping the sounds of a field hospital. I've spent 3 years trying to keep people alive in this war, Dr. Chen finally said. I've watched children die from preventable diseases because our hospital got bombed. I've watched families torn apart because someone decided their neighborhood was a military target. If you're telling me that Americans in positions of power are actively preventing peace, I need to know you're absolutely certain. I'm certain, Rachel said. I have classified documents, satellite footage, financial records, everything. And I'm willing to deliver it personally if that's what it takes. Personally, you're talking about going to a war zone where you're a wanted operator. They'll kill you on sight. Maybe, but I have to try. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long time. There's a medical convoy heading to the capital in 48 hours. We have permission from al-Rashid's government to deliver supplies and provide medical care in areas affected by the recent bombings. If you can get to Athens, Greece, I might be able to get you into the convoy. Might. No guarantees. I'll take might over nothing. Then you better move fast. And Commander, if this is a setup, if you're trying to use my organization to get access for some kind of operation, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. It's not a setup. I'm just trying to do the right thing. Maybe for the first time in my career. Yeah, Dr. Chen said softly. That's what Michael said too. He also said you were the only one who refused to pull the trigger when ordered to kill. That counts for something in my book. The line went dead. Rachel had 36 hours to get to Athens. No passport, they'd be watching for that. No official travel, same reason. She needed to disappear completely and reappear in Greece. It was impossible, which meant she had to do it anyway. She made 3 calls. The first to a forger she had used during an undercover operation in Eastern Europe. Cash only, no questions, and documents good enough to pass most security screenings. The second to a cargo pilot she had worked with during her first deployment. He owed her a favor from when she had kept him out of a court-martial. Time to collect. The third to an offshore account where she had been saving money for years. Emergency funds, rainy day money. This was the rainiest day she'd ever seen. 24 hours later, she was in a cargo plane over the Atlantic. No passenger manifest, no flight plan, just her and 60 tons of medical supplies and a pilot who knew better than to ask questions. "You look like hell," the pilot said. "I feel worse. Whatever you're into, it's bad, isn't it?" Rachel looked out at the dark ocean below. "Yeah, it's bad. Need help. No, this is something I have to do alone." "Bullshit. Nobody does anything alone. That's how you get killed." "Maybe I deserve to get killed." The pilot looked at her with something like pity. "I flew you into Fallujah. I flew you into Kandahar. I flew you into places that don't exist on maps where you did things that kept a lot of people safe. Whatever you're doing now, I'm guessing it's the same thing. Trying to keep people safe, so don't give me that deserve to die crap. The world needs people like you, even when it doesn't deserve them." Rachel wanted to believe that, but the truth was, she didn't know what she was anymore. Not a soldier, not a hero, just someone trying to make up for almost committing murder because someone told her it was necessary. They landed in Greece at dawn. Dr. Chen was waiting with a medical convoy and a stern expression. "You look terrible." "That's what people keep telling me." "Can you handle a rifle if things go bad?" "I can handle anything you need me to handle." "Good, because where we're going, things are always bad." The convoy was 12 vehicles, trucks, loaded with medicine, food, water purification equipment, and hope. The drivers were locals, the doctors and nurses were international volunteers, and everyone knew that at any moment they could be caught in crossfire or hit by a bomb or simply disappear into the chaos that was the war zone. They drove for 3 days, through checkpoints manned by soldiers who looked like children, through cities that had been beautiful once and were now just rubble and memories, through refugee camps where hope went to die. Rachel rode in the back of a supply truck and watched the country she had been trained to see as enemy territory reveal itself as just another place full of people trying to survive. On the 3rd day, they reached the capital. Dr. Chen pulled Rachel aside. "Al-Rashid's people are expecting us. They know we're bringing medical supplies. They don't know we're bringing you. If I take you to them and this goes wrong, my organization loses access. People die because we can't deliver medicine. You understand the stakes?" "I understand." "Then let's hope your information is worth it." The meeting was arranged for that evening, a hospital that had been partially destroyed in the bombing, now being used as a temporary government building. Security was tight but not overwhelming. Al-Rashid didn't hide from his people even now. Rachel was searched, scanned, and escorted through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and despair. She was carrying the flash drive in a medical supply container. No weapons, no backup, just the truth and the hope that it would be enough. She was brought to a small room with a single table and 2 chairs, and then she waited. When the door opened, Supreme Leader Karim al-Rashid entered alone. He looked older than he had through her scope, more tired, more worn, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "Commander Cole," he said in perfect English, "I've been expecting you." Rachel stood. "Sir, Sit down." It wasn't an order, just a suggestion. "You look like you've traveled a long way to tell me something. The least I can do is listen." They sat. Rachel placed the flash drive on the table. "This contains evidence that elements within the American government orchestrated the bombing at your peace rally, that they sent me to assassinate you as part of a larger operation designed to destabilize your country and prevent peace negotiations, that they profit from this war and will do anything to keep it going." Al-Rashid looked at the flash drive but didn't touch it. "Why would you bring this to me? Why not go to your own government?" "Because my own government is the problem. And because you deserve to know who's trying to kill you and why." He smiled sadly. "I already know who's trying to kill me, and I already know why. What I don't know is why you're here. A SEAL commander betraying her country, risking her life to help an enemy. That's the part I'm trying to understand." Rachel met his eyes. "You're not my enemy. You never were. You're just a man trying to make peace. And I was sent to kill you for it. That makes the people who gave the order my enemy, not you. Al-Rashid was quiet for a long moment. You know what they'll do to you when you go back. I'm not going back. You can't stay here? You're an American Special Forces operator in a country America is at war with. Even if I wanted to protect you, my own people would demand justice for the bombing. I know. That's why I'm asking you to do something with this information. Expose it. Make it public. Force accountability, even if it destroys me in the process. He picked up the flash drive. Accountability is a beautiful idea, but the people who did this have been avoiding accountability for generations. What makes you think exposing them will change anything? Because maybe if enough people know the truth, maybe if enough people see how the machine really works, maybe they'll stop accepting it. Maybe they'll demand better. Maybe things will change. Or maybe they'll just find new ways to hide what they're doing. Rachel felt something break inside her. Then this was all for nothing. Cardinal 3 is dead for nothing. I threw away my career for nothing. The truth doesn't matter. Justice doesn't matter. Nothing matters except who has more power. Al-Rashid stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was slowly recovering from the bombing. People rebuilding, cleaning, trying to create normal life in the shadow of war. My grandfather fought the British, he said quietly. My father fought the Soviets. I've been fighting someone my entire life. Americans, insurgents, warlords, my own government. And you know what I've learned? Fighting never ends. Violence creates more violence. The only way to break the cycle is to refuse to participate. Which is why they tried to kill you. Yes, which is why they'll try again and again until either I'm dead or they are. He turned back to Rachel. But here's what they don't understand. Every time they attack a peace rally, every time they kill civilians, every time they prove that they're willing to do anything to maintain control, they make peace more necessary. They prove why we have to resist, not with violence, with truth. He held up the flash drive. I'll use this. I'll give it to international investigators. I'll make sure it reaches journalists who can't be silenced. I'll do everything in my power to expose what was done. But Commander Cole, you need to understand something. This won't save you. It might not even change anything. The machine is too big, too entrenched. Exposing one conspiracy just makes them better at hiding the next one. Then why bother? Because we have to. Because the alternative is accepting that might makes right and murder is policy, and human lives are just numbers in someone's budget. Because if we stop fighting for truth, for justice, for the idea that people matter more than profit, then they've already won. Rachel felt tears burning in her eyes. I almost killed Duwu. I had you in my sights. I was trained to follow orders without question. If it had been anyone else, I would have pulled the trigger. But you didn't. You chose humanity over duty. Conscience over command. That's worth something. It got people killed. Cardinal 3, maybe. Cardinal 4, probably more. And how many people would have died if you had taken the shot? How many more years of war? How many children who would grow up in refugee camps? How many mothers who would never see their sons again? How many families destroyed? He shook his head. You made the only choice that honored life. Everything else was just different flavors of death. Someone knocked on the door. Security. Time was up. Al-Rashid walked to the door, then paused. There's a transport leaving for Turkey tomorrow morning. Medical personnel and refugees. Dr. Chen has arranged a place for you. From Turkey, you can go anywhere. Disappear. Start over. Live a life that doesn't involve killing. They'll find me. Maybe, but you'll have a chance, which is more than most people get. He opened the door. Security guards entered. But before they could take her, Al-Rashid did something unexpected. He reached out and shook her hand. Thank you, Commander, for choosing the right thing over the easy thing, for proving that soldiers can still be human beings, for giving me hope that maybe someday enough people will make the same choice and we can finally have peace. Rachel was escorted out of the building back through the corridors that smelled like antiseptic and despair back to the convoy. Dr. Chen was waiting. Well, he's going to use it, going to expose everything. And you, I'm getting on a transport to Turkey tomorrow. After that, I don't know. Dr. Chen put her hand on Rachel's shoulder. You did a good thing. You should know that. In case it all goes to hell and you don't get another chance to hear it, you did a good thing. Rachel wanted to believe that, but she had seen too much to trust that good things mattered in a world that rewarded cruelty and punished conscience. The transport left at dawn. Rachel sat with refugees who had lost everything and medical workers who had given everything and everyone in between. They crossed the border into Turkey without incident. From Turkey, she made her way to Greece. From Greece, she found a cargo ship headed for South America. From South America, she disappeared into a town so small it didn't have a name on most maps. She bought a small house with the last of her emergency funds, got a job teaching English to local children, grew a garden, lived quietly. For 6 months, nothing happened. She watched the news when she could access it, watched as al-Rashid released the files to international media, watched as the story dominated headlines for 3 weeks, watched as congressional hearings were held and investigations were launched and promises were made, watched as slowly, inevitably, the story faded. Other scandals emerged. Other crises demanded attention. The machinery of distraction ground on. Some low-level operatives were disciplined. Some procedures were reformed. Some oversight mechanisms were strengthened. But the machine kept running. Victoria Strand retired quietly. The general whose initial had been on the memo died of a heart attack. The investment firms continued investing. The defense contractors continued contracting. The wars continued warring. Rachel watched it all happen from a distance and felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just emptiness. She had burned her entire life down for truth, and truth had changed almost nothing. The children she taught were kind. The garden grew. Life continued. It wasn't the life she had imagined, wasn't the life she had trained for, but it was a life where she didn't have to point a rifle at unarmed men and make calculations about acceptable collateral damage. That had to count for something. One evening, almost a year after she had arrived, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Cardinal 2, older, thinner, with new scars and old eyes. "Michael," she said. His real name still felt strange on her tongue. "Rachel." They stood in the doorway for a long moment. "How did you find me?" "Same way I find anyone. Patience and resources." He smiled tiredly. "Can I come in?" She let him in, made tea. They sat on her small porch and watched the sunset paint the mountains orange and purple. "Cardinal 4 is alive," he said. "He went underground, teaching computer science at a community college in Montana. Uses a different name, keeps his head down, but he's alive." "That's good." "Yeah." Michael was quiet, which meant we did what we could. It wasn't enough, but we did it. "Did we make any difference at all?" "I don't know. Maybe. Some things changed. Some people got fired. Some policies got reviewed. Is it enough? No. Will it stop the next war? Probably not. But maybe it made the next war a little harder to start. Maybe it made a few people think twice before ordering an assassination. Maybe it saved some lives we'll never know about." Rachel thought about the old man and his nephew, about the children in the refugee camp, about al-Rashid touching a baby's face with such gentleness. "I hope so." They sat in silence as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. "You ever regret it?" Michael asked. "Not taking the shot, burning it all down." Rachel thought about that. Thought about 14 years of service. Thought about the pension she'd never collect and the medals she'd never receive and the life she'd never get back. Thought about the alternative, taking the shot, killing a man who was trying to make peace, living with that choice for the rest of her life. "No," she said finally, "I don't regret it. For the first time in my career, I don't regret a mission. Because you finally chose right over orders. Because I finally chose human being over weapon." Michael nodded slowly. "I'm getting out too, for real this time. Found a place in New Zealand, as far from the machine as I can get. Thought I'd stop by and say goodbye, in case we don't see each other again." Rachel understood. They were ghosts now, haunting the edges of a world that had no use for people who asked too many questions. But at least they were free ghosts. "Take care of yourself, Michael." "You too, Rachel." He stood to leave, paused at the door. "What you did, refusing that shot, it mattered. Maybe not in ways we can see, maybe not in ways that make headlines, but somewhere some kid is alive because you chose conscience over duty. Some family is still whole because you refused to pull the trigger. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Nothing's ever enough, but it's something, and something is all we get." He left. Rachel never saw him again. She continued teaching, continued gardening, continued living a quiet life in a small town where nobody knew her real name or her real history. Sometimes late at night, she would think about what might have been if she had taken the shot, if she had followed orders, if she had stayed in the machine and let it use her until there was nothing left. She would think about Victoria Strand and the general and all the people who made decisions from rooms without windows. And she would think about Supreme Leader al-Rashid, who had chosen peace even knowing it might get him killed. The last news story she read about him was 3 years after their meeting. He had survived 2 more assassination attempts. His peace initiatives had failed. His country was still at war. But he was still trying, still choosing hope over hate, peace over profit, humanity over machinery. And that Rachel finally understood was the real victory. Not in changing the world, not in bringing down the machine, but in refusing to let the machine change you. In choosing to remain human even when being human was punished. In doing the right thing even when the right thing accomplished nothing. She closed her laptop and walked out into her garden. The sun was setting again. The children she taught were playing in the distance. The mountains stood eternal and unconcerned. And Rachel Cole, who had once been America's most lethal operator, who had been trained to kill without question and follow orders without hesitation, who had almost murdered a man for the crime of wanting peace. Rachel Cole watered her tomatoes and felt something close to contentment. For the first time in her life, she knew she had fought for something that mattered. Not for strategic objectives or national interests or the people who profited from chaos, but for the simple radical idea that human beings were worth more than the wars they were used to fight. It wasn't victory, but it was enough. It had to be enough, because it was all she had, and she had chosen it freely, knowing the cost, accepting the price. The price of justice, the price of peace, the price of finally, after all these years, being able to look at herself in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. That was worth everything she had lost, and everything she would never get back. The end.